Okay guys, today we're looking at the Noodle rig. On the face of it, looks an extremely complicated rig to tie, but it is actually very simple, and it all starts with just a length of uncoated braid, just a supple braid. Now I'd normally strip the inner core of the rigmarole skinful for this because I just like the suppleness of the braid, but for the purposes of this video I'm going to use a reasonably thick braid so you can see better what I'm doing. You need to be quite generous with this. In order to tie the combi link, you need quite a bit of material left over, so cut yourself off 8 to 10 inches at the start, and as I said, as you get used to tying it, you can get your measurements exactly right so you don't get too much wastage, but cut that off, and so we have just a length of supple braid. Okay, now all we're going to do is very simply is tie just an overhand loop knot in the end, like you would for any rig, to create a hair. There we go. Slightly more difficult with a thicker braid, but there we go. Okay, so a simple overhand knot, and we'll cut off the excess. There you go. Okay, all we need now is a rig ring. So the one I'm using here is a bit smaller than normal. I would normally use a 3.7mm rig ring. And what I'm going to do is slide it down towards the loop I've just tied, and then once again tie a very simple overhand knot. So what this will do is create my hair, and the distance it is from the hook. So I like mine to be about 1.5 centimeters at that sort of length, and I'm just going to pull that overhand loop tight. So I have the rig ring and the loop for the hair. Simple. Next we get ourselves a hook. In this instance I'm using the Gardener incisor, but again it really is personal choice, and I'm going to go into the rig ring towards the loop. I then turn the hook around. So as you can see there, I've now got the rig ring pretty much opposite the barb, is where I like it, and then my hair. And now what I'm going to do is clamp the rig ring in place, and I'm going to tie just a basic knotless knot. So I'm going to go in through the back of the eye of the hook, vitally important, and I'm going to go around the shank 1, 2, 3, 4 times, and then back through the eye of the hook. Simple as that. And there we have stage 1 complete. So a simple blowback rig with a sub 1 coated braid. Okay, for step 2 we're going to introduce some shrink tube, which creates the kicker and gives the noodle rig its name. So here I have, straight out the packet, a 6 centimeter length of shrink tube. I think it's the about a 2.4mm rig tube, and what I'm going to do is, this works out perfectly for me because I like a 3 centimeter piece of tube. Others like it shorter, others like it longer, but for me 3 centimeters, and I'm going to put this perfectly in half. Now be quite fussy about this, get it exactly in half, because these measurements are important. You want to be able to use both pieces, but as you can see there, I've put it completely in half, and all I'm going to do now is put my scissors through the middle and then cut it. Okay, so what I've created there is two identical pieces of shrink tube. Okay, I'm going to take one of these and using the end of my braid I'm going to slide that through the shrink tube, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull this down to just over the knot that I've created, just over those 4 turns, not right down the hook, literally just over the end of the hook. And what I'm now going to do is shrink that down. So guys, safety is key here. Normally use a pair of pliers on one end or a puller tool and some pliers the other end. Hold that over the steam, and I'm just going to steam that straight at this point. I'm not going to do anything fancy at this point. So let's go away and do that now when we come back for step 3. Now that we've shrunk our shrink tube, you can see how the diameter's got a lot smaller. We can now start thinking about tying the Albright knot. And the Albright knot is what the majority of people use to attach a combi link, and we're going to show you that now. So I need a boom section, and for this I'm going to use the Rigmarole Cam H2O. It's a fluorocarbon in 15 pounds. Beautiful material, very versatile, and straightens when you pull it, which is fantastic for just correcting your rigs when you come in for recasting. So once again, dependent on how you like the length of your rig to completed rig to be, I normally like it around about 7-8 inches, so I'm going to pull off about 12 inches of this material, and that should just be about right to avoid too much wastage. And now what I'm going to do with this is very simply, I'm going to fold it over at the top, so I've got a little loop. So all I've done is just folded that over. Yeah. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pinch the top of that loop. And all it's going to do is just create a bit more of a V, and just keep the loop together. Okay. Simple as that. Now with this loop, holding it open, I'm going to bring the end of my braid and I'm just going to push it through. Okay, so I've simply just got that running through that loop, and I'm going to pull that right up to where the shrink tube is. Yeah. What I'm going to do is hold the bottom of the shrink tube and just the top of the crimped loop of the nylon. Okay, and what that leaves me is the little tag end that I folded over and the full length of my boom. And with my braid, I'm now just going to start wrapping this round tightly around the 2 bits of fluorocarbon. So that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, 5, and that's 6. And then what I'm going to do is go 3 times back up the shank, back up the other way. So I've come down 6 times, and I'm going to go back up 3 times now. So over the 6 coils I've just done, that's 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I've gone down 6 times and up 3 times. And now I'm going to pinch all of those coils, and this part of the rig, part of the knot I should say, is absolutely critical. So whatever way this went in, I have to come out. So it came in from this way, the braid on the end of the hook link there. It went in that way, so I have to go out that way. Okay, it's absolutely critical or the knot won't work. So pay a lot of attention to that. So I go through the loops, and now I pull that down. I have both these bits of braid coming out the same way. Okay, and I'll just push this knot up with my fingers, and then I'll start tightening. So from the hook end and the main end of the braid, I just start pulling and I pull that as tight as I possibly can. And to avoid hooking your fingers, you're best using a puller tool here, just giving it one last good old pull. Now, paying attention at this stage and getting that tight and nicely bedded down will allow you to snip off these tag sections very, very close. So I can go right up to the knot as close as to there, snip off the fluorocarbon tag, and I can do exactly the same with the braid tag. Snip that off as close as to there, right up to the knot, nice and neat. And what that leaves me now is a nice knot which is attached to my supple bit of braid to my stiff fluorocarbon, and now if I let that go, you can see straight away what we've created there. Beautiful hinge, suppleness, and the stiff material of fluorocarbon. There we go, step 3 complete. Right, the next stage now is to shape this piece of shrink tube, which creates the noodle rig and that all important shape. And all I'm going to do is re-steam this, leave it for 2 or 3 seconds over the steam, let it soften up, and that will allow me to shape it. And what I will do is, once it's soft, I'll quickly pinch the end of the shrink tube with my thumb and forefinger, and I'm going to bend it round the tip of my thumb to give it that tiny bit of shape. And at the same time, I'm going to pull it down at an angle like that, a 45-degree angle. It wants to be just below the hook point. That's the ideal angle. So let's go do that now. Okay guys, as you can see now, exactly as I said, with this, when this was straight, I steamed it, got it soft, I grabbed the end, pinched it round my thumb and forefinger and pulled it down at an angle to just below the point of the hook. I'm going to hold it for about 5-6 seconds, let it solidify. Once I let it go, I've now got that all important angle, you can see. But the critical part of this is that that point there is below the line of the hook. If I run a line from the point of the hook, the bottom of the shrink tube will be just below it, and it's really important. It's also worth having a quick look at it this way, making sure everything's nice and straight. You don't want all this kinked over this way, so make sure you've held it nice and straight and everything's in alignment, which that is beautifully. Okay, that's the end of that step. Okay, so the final step to complete the rig is to firstly place, I have a rigmarole long rig sleeve here, which with my eyesight is a bit difficult, but finally. So what I've spoken about all the way through is being really, really meticulous with your measurements of your rigs to make sure that they're consistently the same every time. So what I'm going to do here is bring in a rig safe. I'm going to place the end of my shrink tube on the 0, and I'm going to run this all the way along and get the point of my sleeve on the 8 centimeters, which is exactly how I like it here. Okay, and I grab hold of that, get the end of the line, push this away, and now I'm just going to create my loop. Just a simple overhand loop is absolutely fine, which we have there. Give that a little tug just to make sure it's bedded down properly before we snip it off. take that away. I'll snip off the excess. I don't go too tight, but this one there's no need to. And all I do is pull the loop into the sleeve. What I'm going to do now is, I mentioned about this particular fluorocarbon earlier, I'm going to put each end in a puller tool. So one this end, one this end, and I'm going to give it a good old pull, and that makes it absolutely beautifully straight. And you can do that every time you bring your rig in, and it'll always be beautifully straight. But there's your hinge, that beautiful hinge. What will happen is that will hook like so and curl around the side of my palm. It's a bit difficult to show this without the weight of a bait on the other end, but as you can see that wants to turn and hook, and the shrink tube wraps nicely around what would be the bottom lip. What this does is hooks the fish slightly further inside the mouth, so it goes behind the soft tissue and keep in the fat of the lip. It's a great hook holds, and you very rarely lose fish with this rig. But there it is, the noodle rig. To finish off, I like to put a little bit of putty around the knot that you created. Helps it adhere perfectly, but it also helps that hook turn, pulling it down. So a bit of weight quickly helps the hook turn. Bang. Perfect. Give it a go.